Welcome back, fic readers. This is part 7 of the series Fluffy Minty Boy and His Dragon Daddy, called The Proud Law by RdmFavCpls. Let's get started. Summary. Class 1A goes to America for a summer training camp and vacation. There, Izuku catches the attention of an American lawyer who just wants some cuddles and conspiracy theories. Story begins. America, Izuku thought, has always been a better place to live, no matter if you were quirked or not. Court cases from centuries ago had helped pave the path forward for quirks, rallies, parades, human equal rights laws, and just so much better support groups nationwide. Hate crimes were still a thing, unfortunately, but they were taken seriously by the FBI and the police enforcement. They even added a new series of hate crimes that were focused on the victim being quirkless, or what type of quirk they had, and the support the families of victims received was amazing. 6-year-old Midoriya Izuku did so much research, begging and pleading to his mom to let him live with his dad in America when they divorced, but she refused. She was a wonderful mother, and Izuku loved her so much. But she refused to acknowledge that just because he's quirkless doesn't mean that his father's genetics don't affect him. Some examples being that he needs to be at a higher body temperature to develop correctly, a sharper sense of smell and eyesight, a craving for raw meat sometimes, and his notebooks were not an obsession, but his hoard. She buried her head in the sand with her rose-tinted glasses on over the fact that his father would have been a better parent to raise him. So he had to continuously deal with Bakugo's bullying and explosions just to survive with barely enough heat to keep his organs working and his blood flowing. When he befriended Todoroki, it was a blessing, and when Todoroki kept insisting that All Might was his father and provided evidence, Midoriya laughed. Todoroki's reaction to when Midoriya telling him the truth and FaceTiming with his dad, who had encouraged Todoroki's other theories, was priceless. So when his class was getting a trip to America for summer training camp and some sightseeing, he was not letting his mother say no to this, especially since the thing he nerds out about, besides heroes, is laws. And Aizawa had planned on going to the Museum of Law History. Midoriya was 100% going to it. Midoriya wanted to laugh at Aizawa's expression when he saw that Todoroki and Midoriya had stayed behind with him, instead of going to the mall with Yamada and Kayama, or sightseeing with Snipe. You two are sure about going to a museum that deals with American laws and America's Supreme Court cases that change their history? Aizawa said with a raised eyebrow. Yes, Todoroki said with a nod. Laws in general are Midoriya's second obsession. Aizawa blinked. Todoroki and Midoriya blinked back. For someone who claims to be so observant, how have you not realized that you're Midoriya's favorite teacher and teach his favorite class? Todoroki asked. Midoriya couldn't help but laugh at Aizawa's expression when Todoroki says that in his usual monotone voice. This trip is going to be so much fun. On the city sidewalk, an 8-foot-tall human with a dragon head, scales a dark green color in the warm sunlight, but looks black in the dark, toxic green eyes grew wider as his pupils became thin like slits. The scent of coffee, cherries, and sleep exhaustion weakened the scent of burning forests, fresh fallen snow, and touch-starved loneliness. But the scent that caught his attention was of a rainforest surrounding a batch of fresh mint. But the smell of a frosty death was around the corner. The man leaned down. His 3-foot dragon tail, scales the same color as his head, raised his black shirt with the English word for white in blue. Blue sweatpants allowing the tail to move freely as blue sneakers started to run on the pavement. He had a scent to follow. I support Midoriya's obsessions as he supports my theories, Todoroki said, answering their teacher's question over why Todoroki had joined them. I see. So why are the two of you so happy to break the laws back home? Aizawa said. Japan's laws have so many loopholes that I can argue that we have not broken any laws back home, Midoriya said. He stumbled as he walked underneath an air duct that was blasting cold air. I didn't think they would make this place into a freezer. Aizawa blinked. Freezer? It's not that cold, Aizawa said in concern. I'm different, Midoriya said. He nodded. Yeah, let's go with that. How cold are you? Todoroki said. Do you need me to use my fire? If I start going into hibernation, yes, because of a medical emergency, Midoriya said. Then drag my body outside and scream, "He lives!" before blasting me with fire. Like I did during that snowball fight, Todoroki said. Yes. Explain, please, Aizawa said, because I'm responsible for your health, and I'm not letting you die. Eri would be sad. I'll be fine. I'm not ruining this summer for anyone, Midoriya said. He looked over at Aizawa. Where to first? The Dragon Man entered the museum where the 3 scents hit his nostrils strongly. They were at the entrance less than 5 minutes ago. He took off, following the scents, and a plume of gray smoke escaped his mouth. He found them. Now he just needs to get his sight on the prey. Aizawa misses his capture scarf because he is trying so hard not to smile as Midoriya explains the Supreme Court cases to Todoroki. That's reminiscent of the way he teaches his own class. Todoroki listens to every word, like Midoriya will guide him on the right path. Their friendship has really benefited them both, and Aizawa couldn't be prouder. He did find it weird that once Todoroki joined Midoriya's friend group, that Midoriya seemed to have a healthier glow and a growth spurt. Then again, teenage bodies are weird. But Todoroki did say something about using his fire to keep Midoriya alive. That was really concerning, and he will be getting information about that soon, preferably before they return back to Japan. Midoriya, do you know much about this Hisashi versus Harvard case? Aizawa asked, watching his 2 students. Midoriya spun around with a bright smile, stars in his eyes, and how was his body vibrating like that? Of course, Sensei, I'll be happy to, Midoriya said as he walked over, Todoroki following with a fond expression and a shake of his head. Aizawa sighed, as he knew that expression all too well, considering he looks at his husband the same way. What do you need help understanding? Midoriya asked. Explain it to me like you would to the class, Aizawa said. I might want to try a new research assignment when we get back home. You should have picked a different case than this one. This one happens to be Midoriya's favorite case, Todoroki said. Nonsense, Midoriya said. I can still teach it. He pouted at Todoroki. It's not my fault that I may be proud of this case. Sure, Todoroki said, being the perfect example of a deadpan response. Anyway, you know about the ADA, or American Disabilities Act, Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka court case, and the Cork Equality Act, right? Midoriya asks. Yes, Aizawa said with a nod. Good, those are important for Hisashi versus Harvard, Midoriya said with a nod. However, one of the things to remember about this court case is that it is one of the few where the plaintiff specifically asked for their first name to be used, and that the plaintiff was also their own lawyer. Hisashi's quirk is fire-breathing, and he also has a dragon mutation, which is very cool because he hardly uses his fire-breathing, and he would make for an excellent underground hero. Midoriya, Todoroki said. I know. Anyway, Hisashi had gotten accepted into Harvard and had specifically requested to be in physical classes with medical notes. If he looks at a computer for too long, not only will he deal with a migraine, but his body will go into a forced hibernation state. Harvard denied his. Todoroki and Aizawa tensed as a dark green emerald scaled tail wrapped around Midoriya's waist and pulled him away a little bit. They turned to face the person who took Midoriya, Todoroki instantly relaxing his stance. But Aizawa was still tense because that was his problem child who should not look so comfortable with an 8-foot-tall man with a dragon head leaning over him. A whine escaped his throat when Midoriya didn't acknowledge his presence. Request because Harvard said that they do not cater to Izuku, the man said, leaning over Midoriya more, his head completely blocking the view of Midoriya's face. His toxic green eyes staring straight into Aizawa's student's own green eyes. Pay attention to me, the man said with a whine. Midoriya huffed. Can't you see that I was busy talking about your greatest achievement? But you're not talking about yourself, the man said, leaning over Midoriya more when they both yelled as the dragon man started to roll forward with Midoriya. As my son, you are my greatest achievement and the proudest accomplishment. It is because of you that I am proud to be called a dad. Amazing, Mr. Midoriya, Todoroki said as the dragon man rolled forward onto his butt, Izuku in his lap with the tail still curled around him, holding him close to the tall man's chest. Please, call me Hisashi, Hisashi said. Mr. Midoriya makes me sound old. You are old, Midoriya said. Really, father. Aizawa-sensei asked me to explain your case. Harvard discriminated against those with disabilities and mutation types of quirks, using the excuse that they were a prestige college. Harvard lost in court against their top law graduate. That's all, Hisashi said. Really, they just had to look all the way back to Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka to see that what they were doing was unconstitutional. Aizawa blinked as Hisashi nuzzled his snout into Midoriya's curls with a growl. You smell like a frozen bag of beans, about a week from expiring. You feel like death has you in its cold, clammy hands, Hisashi said. That's very descriptive, Aizawa said. Thanks, Dad. Love you too, Midoriya said, grumbling. You know I don't mean it as an insult, Hisashi said. I just don't like it that whenever I see you, it seems like you are close to death because no one realizes you are supposed to be at a much higher body temperature than a normal person. You can thank Mom for that, Izuku said, snuggling into his father's chest. She doesn't like to talk about you or the fact that I'm part dragon. Excuse me? Aizawa said, and toxic green eyes finally looked at him. I'm Midoriya's homeroom teacher, and could we go outside where it's warmer and you can explain all that Midoriya needs to survive since Todoroki and Midoriya won't tell me? We didn't want to ruin your day, Midoriya said with a shrug. It's a vacation day for the staff too, Todoroki said. Aizawa sent a pointed look at each of his students before looking back at the Dragon Man, who was still sitting on the floor without a care in the world. My name is Shota Aizawa, and you are the second coolest hero in the world. Eraserhead. You would be the first, but it's kind of hard to beat my son at being the coolest hero. Todoroki, you're fourth, Hisashi said. How do you know who I am? Aizawa said, as he wasn't wearing his capture scarf, his goggles, or his costume. How could I not? Hisashi asked back, just as confused. Anyway, let's go. This way my fluffy mint can go back to smelling like freshly grown mint instead of a disgusting bag of green beans. Not my fault you hate green beans and frozen food, Izuku said. Just for that, carry me, Hisashi said. Then you won't be able to snuggle me, Izuku said. Good point, Hisashi said, finally standing up. He used his tail to move Izuku into his arms before unwrapping his tail from him. Let's go. Todoroki, am I going to hear more of your theories? Absolutely, Todoroki said, with more expression in his voice than Aizawa has ever heard from the Fire Ice Quirk user. I'm going to need more coffee, Aizawa said, failing to hide his small smile. There's a cafe not too far from here we can go to, Hisashi said, because you are going to be in for a ride with Todoroki's theories. They are just too good not to be true. And that was part 7 of the series Fluffy Minty Boy and His Dragon Daddy, called The Proud Law by RdmFavCpls. This one we get to hear a little bit about a neglectful Inko, and I just want it known personally I have all the love for Inko, but it's always fun to read something different. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to go leave kudos for the original author, and I hope that you join me again next time.